Zuri had always loved fashion since she was a little girl. She would stand in front of the small mirror in her mother's house, trying on scarves and old dresses, pretending to be a model walking on a big stage. She loved colors, fabrics, and the way a simple outfit could make someone feel confident. Growing up in a small town, she never had the money to buy fancy clothes, but she always dreamed of the day she could walk into a real city boutique and choose something special just for herself. Now that day had come. Her cousin Lindy was getting married, and Zuri wanted to look her best. She had been saving every small coin she could, skipping snacks, working extra hours at the cafe, and keeping the money in a little box under her bed. Every time she opened it, she smiled, imagining the dress she would buy. She didn't want something too expensive, just something that made her feel beautiful. The morning was bright and sunny when she finally took the bus into the city. The streets were busy, full of people rushing around, carrying shopping bags, laughing, and talking loudly. Zuri had never seen so many stores before. Her eyes lit up as she passed windows filled with shining jewelry, high heels, and mannequins wearing beautiful dresses. Then she saw it, the boutique that caught her heart. The name was written in gold letters above the glass door. Inside, she could see tall mirrors, soft lighting, and stylish dresses hanging neatly on racks. She stopped for a moment, took a deep breath, and whispered to herself, "This is it." She walked in slowly. The door chimed softly behind her. The air smelled of perfume and new fabric. A young woman in a neat uniform smiled and greeted her politely. "Welcome to Lumina Boutique," she said. "Can I help you find something special today?" Zuri smiled shyly. "I'm looking for a dress. My cousin is getting married next week." "Of course," the woman said warmly. "You came to the right place." She led Zuri to a section filled with soft pastel colors and elegant designs. Zuri ran her fingers gently over the dresses, feeling the smooth fabric. There were satin gowns, lace dresses, and long flowing skirts that shimmered under the lights. She picked one in light blue, the color of the morning sky, and smiled. "Can I try this one, please?" "Certainly," said the assistant, leading her toward the changing rooms at the back of the boutique. The rooms were separated by thick curtains, each one with a full-length mirror and a small seat. "Take your time," the woman said kindly. Zuri nodded and stepped inside. The curtain closed behind her, shutting out the rest of the store. She hung the dress on a hook and looked around. The room was clean and quiet. A soft scent of lavender filled the air. The mirror in front of her was big and shiny, surrounded by small lights. She smiled, thinking, "I've never been anywhere this nice before." She carefully took off her old clothes, folded them neatly, and slipped into the new dress. The fabric was cool against her skin, smooth and light. She turned slowly, watching herself in the mirror. For the first time, she saw a different version of herself, confident, graceful, grown up. Her heart filled with joy. She twirled once, laughing softly at how the skirt moved. But then, something strange caught her eye. Near the top corner of the mirror, just above the edge of the frame, a small red light blinked once. It was so faint she almost thought she imagined it. She leaned closer. The light blinked again. Her smile faded. She stepped back, tilting her head, watching carefully. The light stopped for a moment, then blinked again. Zuri frowned. "What is that?" she thought. Her hands grew cold. Maybe it was just part of the lighting. Maybe it was nothing. But something inside her whispered that it was not normal. She looked around the room. Everything seemed fine, the chair, the curtain, the small shelf. But the more she looked at that little light, the more uncomfortable she felt. Her heart began to beat faster. Trying to calm herself, she said quietly, "It's probably just a reflection." "Don't be silly, Zuri." She forced a smile and turned to face the mirror again. But she couldn't shake off the uneasy feeling growing in her chest. For a moment, she stood still, staring at her own reflection. Then she stepped closer and touched the mirror's surface. It felt cool and smooth, like glass should. But when she pressed lightly with her finger, it didn't feel like a wall behind it. Instead, it gave a soft hollow sound, as if there was space behind the mirror. Her breath caught in her throat. "Could it be a camera?" she whispered. The thought made her step back quickly. She looked around again, her pulse racing. The blinking light had stopped now, but the fear had already rooted itself deep in her mind. She quickly changed back into her own clothes, her fingers trembling as she folded the dress. When she stepped out, the assistant was waiting. "How was it?" she asked with a bright smile. "It's nice," Zuri said softly, trying to sound normal. "I think I'll come back later." The woman nodded politely. "Of course. Take your time." Zuri smiled weakly and hurried toward the door. Her heart thudded in her chest as she walked out of the boutique. The sunlight outside felt too bright, too harsh. She looked back once through the glass window. The boutique looked calm, elegant, and innocent as ever. But now, it seemed to hide something dark beneath the shine. As she walked down the street, her thoughts raced. Was that really a camera? Am I just imagining things? Maybe it's nothing. But what if it's something? She wanted to believe it was just her mind playing tricks, but deep down, she knew what she had seen. When she reached the bus stop, she sat down, still shaken. Her hands were cold. She took a deep breath, trying to think clearly. If that was a camera, she whispered to herself, then other people are being watched too. I have to tell someone. She thought of her friend Mandla, who worked with computers and knew about technology. He always said, "People hide things in plain sight, Zuri. You just have to know where to look." The memory made her sit up straighter. She knew what she had to do. She would tell Mandla, and together they would find out the truth. But as she waited for the bus, she couldn't help glancing around nervously. Every reflection, every window, every shiny surface, made her uneasy. It felt like eyes were watching her, invisible but real. The bus finally arrived. She climbed in, sat near the window, and watched the boutique disappear behind her. It still looked beautiful from the outside, golden letters, smiling staff, elegant dresses, but now she saw it differently. It wasn't just a store anymore. It was a secret she needed to uncover. She didn't know that what she saw that day would not only change her life but would also reveal something much bigger, something that would shock everyone who had ever stepped into that boutique. For now, she just sat quietly, holding her small purse tightly, her mind filled with worry and determination. The city lights flashed past her, and her reflection in the glass looked both frightened and strong. And though she didn't know it yet, this was only the beginning of a story that would make everyone think twice before walking into any boutique again. Zuri stood in front of the mirror, admiring the way the dress flowed around her. It was soft and light, a gentle blue that matched her warm brown skin. She smiled, twisting slightly to see how it looked from the side. For a moment, she forgot everything else, the noise of the city, the long hours she had worked, the tiredness in her feet. All she could think about was how beautiful she felt. The boutique was quiet. The curtain behind her moved slightly, brushing her shoulder as a breeze slipped through the small gap at the top. Somewhere beyond the curtain, she could hear the faint sound of music playing. It was calm and elegant, the kind of song that made people relax. Zuri took a deep breath and smiled at her reflection. Then something caught her attention. A small red light. It blinked once, faint but sharp, near the top corner of the mirror. Zuri froze. At first, she thought it was part of the lighting, maybe a reflection from somewhere else. She blinked, took a small step closer, and stared. The light blinked again. Her smile faded. She leaned in carefully, her heartbeat quickening. It wasn't a trick of the light. It was real. A tiny red dot, pulsing softly in and out, steady and alive, the kind of light she had seen before on cameras, the kind that said recording. Her throat went dry. "That can't be what I think it is," she whispered. Her voice was barely audible, trembling as she said it. She stood still, her breath shallow. The boutique's soft music played faintly in the background, but now it sounded eerie. She looked around the small space, her eyes darting from wall to wall. Everything looked normal, the curtain, the little seat, the clean floor, the hooks on the wall, but that small blinking light made everything feel wrong. Zuri took one slow step backward, then another. Her mind raced. Why would there be a red light there? She thought. Mirrors don't blink. Her heart was pounding now. She pressed her hand against her chest as if to calm it, but it didn't help. Her palms were sweaty. She turned her eyes back to the light. It blinked again, steady and deliberate. She could almost feel it watching her. Zuri's hands shook slightly. She reached out, her fingers trembling, and touched the edge of the mirror. The glass felt cool, smooth, but when she knocked it lightly with her knuckle, it gave off a dull hollow sound. It didn't feel solid. It sounded like there was space behind it. The thought made her skin crawl. She swallowed hard, her mind spinning with fear. "Is someone watching me?" she whispered under her breath. Her reflection stared back at her, but now it didn't feel like she was alone. It felt like someone was on the other side, hiding, watching. She wanted to scream, but she couldn't. Her throat felt locked. Slowly, she stepped away from the mirror. She turned her head toward the curtain. The sounds of people outside, voices, laughter, footsteps, felt distant now, almost unreal. Zuri forced herself to breathe slowly. She couldn't panic here. If she made a scene, they might know she had noticed. She didn't even know who they were, but her instincts screamed at her to be careful. She looked at her reflection one last time, her eyes serious and full of fear. Then she whispered to herself, "Act normal, Zuri. Just act normal." Her fingers moved quickly as she took off the dress, careful not to look at the mirror again. Her mind screamed to hurry, but she kept her movements calm. She folded the dress neatly and placed it back on the hanger. She put on her own clothes, the simple jeans and shirt she had come in with, her hands shaking slightly as she buttoned up. When she was done, she picked up her small purse and took a deep breath. She looked at the curtain and listened. The boutique outside still sounded normal. Calm voices, a laugh, footsteps on the wooden floor. She stepped out slowly, trying to look casual. The store assistant smiled as she approached. "How did it fit?" she asked brightly. "You look like someone who knows what suits her." Zuri smiled faintly, forcing her voice to stay steady. "It was nice," she said softly. "I think I'll come back later. I want to show a friend before I decide." "Of course," the woman said kindly. "Take your time. We'll keep it aside for you if you like." Zuri nodded quickly. "That would be nice, thank you." She didn't look back at the mirror room. She didn't want to. She could still feel the weight of that blinking light in her mind. Every step toward the door felt heavy, like she was walking through a dream. The moment the glass door opened and the sunlight hit her face, she took a deep breath. Fresh air filled her lungs, and she realized how tense she had been. The boutique looked so innocent from the outside, beautiful, clean, perfect. Shoppers passed by without a care, some stopping to look at the dresses displayed in the window. No one knew what might be hidden behind those mirrors. Zuri walked quickly down the street, clutching her purse tightly. She didn't look back. Her mind replayed what she saw, that small red light, blinking quietly as if mocking her. "It can't be real," she told herself again. "Maybe it was just a sensor, or a reflection. Maybe I'm overthinking." But deep down, she knew what she had seen. It wasn't a reflection. It wasn't a sensor. It was something else, something that shouldn't have been there. Her body felt cold despite the afternoon sun. She reached the corner of the street and stopped for a moment. Her hands were still shaking. She looked around. Cars passed by, people laughed, life continued as normal, yet inside her, everything had changed. She thought about all the other women who had probably stood in that same room, smiling at themselves in that same mirror, never knowing what was hidden behind it. The idea made her sick. She pulled out her phone and opened the camera, looking at her own reflection on the screen. Her eyes looked frightened, but behind the fear was something else, determination. Zuri wasn't the kind of person who ignored things. If something was wrong, she needed to know the truth. She took a deep breath and whispered, "I have to find out who's behind this." Her mind went straight to Mandla, her old friend who worked with computers. He had always been curious about strange things, always investigating. If anyone could help her figure this out, it was him. She decided she would go see him. But first, she needed to calm down. Zuri walked into a small cafe nearby and sat in the corner by the window. Her hands still trembled as she stirred her tea. The image of that red light wouldn't leave her mind. It blinked in her thoughts over and over again, like a warning. She looked around at the people in the cafe, talking, laughing, scrolling on their phones, and she realized how easy it was for people to be watched without knowing it. Hidden eyes could be anywhere. The thought made her heart ache. What if someone has been recording people in that boutique for months? Years. Zuri pressed her lips together tightly. She knew she couldn't stay silent. She had to do something. The fear inside her slowly turned into courage. She would go back. Not today, but soon. This time, she wouldn't go alone. She glanced once more at her reflection in the cafe window. Her face looked tired but strong. The fear was still there, but so was the fire to fight. She whispered softly, "They picked the wrong girl to watch." And as the sun began to set outside, Zuri's quiet determination grew stronger. What had begun as a normal shopping trip was now turning into something far bigger, a secret waiting to be exposed. That evening, Zuri sat in her small living room, staring at her cup of tea that had already gone cold. The lights were dim, and the only sound came from the quiet ticking of the clock on the wall. Her mind replayed the moment in the changing room again and again, that tiny red light blinking inside the mirror. It felt like it was still there, blinking somewhere in her memory, refusing to go away. She tried to convince herself that it might have been something harmless, but deep down, she knew what she had seen. There was no mistake. The more she thought about it, the more uneasy she became. Finally, she took a deep breath, picked up her phone, and called her friend Mandla. Mandla was a quiet, clever man who worked with computers and gadgets. He had always been curious about how things worked. When Zuri told him everything, from the boutique to the blinking light, his voice grew serious. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Yes," Zuri replied softly. "It was real. I saw it clearly. I even touched the mirror. It sounded hollow, like something was behind it." There was a short silence before Mandla spoke again. "Then we have to check. Don't go there alone again. We'll go together tomorrow. I'll bring my signal detector. It can pick up hidden cameras." Zuri felt a small wave of relief. Mandla was calm, confident, the opposite of how she felt. "Are you sure it's safe?" she asked quietly. "We'll be careful," he said. "Just act normal. We'll pretend we're shopping. Leave the rest to me." Zuri nodded, though he couldn't see her. "Thank you," she whispered. That night, she hardly slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the mirror again. She imagined a stranger on the other side of it, sitting behind a screen, watching. The thought made her stomach twist. By morning, she was ready. The next day, Zuri met Mandla outside the same boutique. He was wearing a simple shirt and carried a small bag across his shoulder. His expression was serious, but when he saw Zuri, he gave a reassuring smile. "Don't worry," he said. "We'll get the truth today." Zuri nodded. "I just hope no one notices." "They won't," Mandla said. He opened his bag slightly to show her the small device inside, a compact black box with a few blinking lights and a short antenna. "This detects hidden wireless signals. If there are cameras transmitting anything, this will find them." They both took a deep breath and walked into the boutique. The same woman who had helped Zuri the day before greeted them with a bright smile. "Welcome back," she said. "You brought a friend." "Yes," Zuri said calmly. "He's helping me pick something for the wedding." The woman nodded happily and walked away to help another customer. Mandla whispered quietly, "Stay close to me." He turned on the device inside his bag. The small light on it flickered green as it began to scan the area. Zuri glanced around nervously, pretending to look at dresses. The boutique still looked as beautiful and peaceful as before. Soft lights, gentle music, and polished mirrors everywhere. No one would guess what might be hidden behind those shiny walls. As they walked toward the changing area, the device gave a faint beep. Mandla frowned slightly but said nothing. They continued walking. Another beep, louder this time. Zuri's heart started to race. She tried to act normal, smiling faintly as she looked at a dress on display. Mandla glanced around and whispered, "It's picking something up." When they reached the changing rooms, he slowly moved the device near the mirrors. The beeping grew faster, louder. He looked at Zuri and gave a small nod. "There's definitely a signal," he said quietly. "There's a hidden camera here." Zuri felt her stomach drop. "You're sure?" she whispered. "Yes," Mandla said. "And not just one. The signal is strong. It's coming from several directions. That means there are multiple cameras." Zuri's eyes widened. "Oh no." "Stay calm," Mandla said. "We'll need proof." He took out his phone and started recording a short video of the beeping detector near the mirror. The sound of the beeps filled the small space, steady and clear. He pointed to the blinking light inside the glass, the same one Zuri had seen the day before. "There," he said softly. "That's one of them." They moved quietly from one changing room to the next, pretending to browse, while Mandla's device continued to beep. It picked up at least 4 different signals in total. Each one seemed to be hidden inside or behind a mirror. Zuri's hands trembled slightly. How can they do this? So many people must have used these rooms. Mandla's jaw tightened. "It's illegal," he said firmly. "Very illegal. Whoever owns this place is spying on people and maybe even selling the recordings. We have to report this." Zuri nodded slowly. Her fear was now mixed with anger. The thought of innocent people being recorded without their knowledge made her blood boil. They moved toward the back of the boutique, pretending to look at accessories. Mandla quietly turned off the device and slipped it back into his bag. "We've got enough," he whispered. "Let's go before someone notices." Zuri followed him toward the exit, keeping her face calm. But inside, her thoughts were loud and restless. Every person in the boutique looked suspicious now. The smiling workers, the customers, even the owner who stood behind the counter. Did they know? Were they part of it? When they stepped outside, Zuri finally let out a long breath she didn't know she was holding. Her hands were still shaking. "Did we get enough proof?" she asked. Mandla nodded, showing her his phone. "Yes. The video shows the beeping near the mirrors. It's clear enough to prove something is there." "What do we do now?" she asked. "We report it," he said. "We'll go to the police first. Then, if needed, the media. People need to know about this place." Zuri looked back at the boutique. From the outside, it still looked beautiful, elegant, innocent. It was hard to believe that something so terrible could hide behind all that beauty. She felt a lump in her throat. So many people must have gone in there, Mandla. So many women. Some might not even know they were being watched. Mandla nodded. "That's why we have to stop it." They walked away slowly, the afternoon sun warm on their backs. Zuri's heart was heavy, but there was also a strange sense of relief. She wasn't imagining things. The truth was worse than she expected, but at least now she knew. As they reached the corner of the street, Mandla stopped. "We have to be careful," he said. "If they realize we found out, they might try to destroy the evidence." Zuri frowned. "Do you think they'll find out?" "I don't know," he said honestly. "But we can't take chances. We'll report it today." Zuri nodded. She looked at him with a mixture of fear and gratitude. "Thank you for helping me. I couldn't have done this alone." Mandla smiled gently. "You did the hardest part, Zuri. You noticed what others missed. That takes courage." His words made her feel stronger. She took a deep breath and looked up at the city around her, the busy streets, the moving cars, the people rushing past. No one around them knew what they had just discovered. But soon they would. Zuri pulled her phone from her bag and looked at the picture she had secretly taken of the boutique sign. She whispered softly, "You won't hurt anyone else." Zuri and Mandla walked quickly through the busy streets, heading straight for the police station. The video on Mandla's phone was clear, the beeping detector, the hidden cameras behind the mirrors, and the red light Zuri had seen. Both of them were nervous, but they knew there was no time to waste. The longer they waited, the more danger there was that the evidence could be destroyed or that more people would walk into the boutique and become victims. The police station was crowded and noisy. People stood in lines, waiting to report thefts and other problems. Zuri clutched her bag tightly, feeling the weight of what she was about to say. When an officer finally called them forward, Mandla explained everything. "My friend noticed something strange in a boutique," he said calmly. "Hidden cameras, inside the changing rooms. We have proof." The officer's expression changed immediately. He straightened up and gestured for them to follow him into a small office. "Start from the beginning," he said. Zuri spoke softly but clearly. She told them how she had gone shopping, how she noticed the red blinking light, how she had been too afraid to react right away, and how Mandla's device confirmed her fears. Her voice shook once or twice, but she kept talking. She wanted them to understand. When she finished, Mandla took out his phone and played the video. The faint sound of beeping filled the room, steady and quick. The officer leaned closer, eyes narrowing as he watched. "That's a signal detector," Mandla explained. "Each time it beeps, it means there's a wireless camera transmitting data. We found 4 signals inside the boutique, all in the changing area." The officer nodded slowly. "And this is the boutique's name?" "Yes," Zuri said. "It's called Golden Glamour Boutique. It's on Queen Street." The officer stood up immediately. "Stay here. I'll call the investigation team." Zuri and Mandla waited in silence. Zuri's hands trembled in her lap. She wasn't scared for herself anymore. She was thinking about the people who had shopped there before her. The young girls, the mothers, the families. All of them trusting that place. All of them unknowingly being watched. Within minutes, several officers gathered around. They asked more questions: when she had been there, how long, what she had seen, and whether anyone in the store had acted suspiciously. Mandla showed them the exact timestamps of the signals on his detector. "Good work," one of the senior officers said. "You both did the right thing coming to us." Soon, 2 police vans were ready to leave. The officers asked Zuri and Mandla to come along, just in case they needed help identifying the exact rooms. Zuri hesitated but agreed. The ride to the boutique felt long. Zuri stared out the window, her heart heavy but firm. She knew something big was about to happen. Mandla sat beside her, calm and focused, though his jaw was tight. When they arrived, the boutique looked just as peaceful and perfect as before. The owner stood behind the counter, smiling politely at customers. He had no idea what was about to unfold. The officers entered together. One stepped forward and showed his badge. "We're from the city police," he said. "We've received a complaint. We need to inspect your changing rooms." The owner blinked, his smile fading slightly. "A complaint? About what?" "Please step aside, sir," the officer said firmly. "We'll explain once we've done our inspection." 2 officers walked straight toward the back of the store where the changing rooms were. They used their own scanning devices, larger and more powerful than Mandla's. Within seconds, the machines began to beep loudly. "There," one officer said, pointing at a mirror. "Signal detected." The owner's face turned pale. "What are you doing?" he asked nervously. "This is a respectable business. You can't just barge in like this." But the beeping continued. The officers moved from one room to another, marking the mirrors where signals were strongest. When they finally removed one of the mirrors from the wall, everyone gasped. Behind it was a small black camera, no bigger than a coin, connected by a thin wire running into the wall. Zuri covered her mouth. Even though she had known it was there, seeing it with her own eyes made her stomach twist. One of the officers held the camera up carefully with gloves. "You've got some explaining to do," he said to the boutique owner. The owner began to stammer. I didn't know. Someone else must have installed it. Maybe a worker." "Save it," another officer said coldly. "We'll find out." They continued searching and found 3 more cameras in different rooms. Each one was active and connected to a small device hidden in the ceiling. The officers carefully removed everything, labeling and collecting it as evidence. Meanwhile, curious customers began to gather at the entrance. Word spread quickly through the street. People whispered, pointing toward the boutique as police officers moved in and out. Zuri stood quietly by the door, feeling both shaken and relieved. She had done the right thing. If she had ignored that small blinking light, this might have gone on for months or even years. One of the officers returned and spoke to her. "We checked the system," he said. "The cameras were sending videos online. Someone set it up to record inside the changing rooms and upload the footage to a private server. We've already contacted our cyber team to trace the source." Zuri's heart ached. So people were actually being recorded? "Yes," the officer said grimly. "And not just recorded, shared." She felt tears sting her eyes. Mandla put a hand on her shoulder. "You stopped it," he said softly. "If you hadn't spoken up, they would still be doing this." The owner was led outside by 2 officers. He shouted angrily, "This is a mistake. I didn't do anything wrong." But no one believed him. His hands shook as the police car door closed behind him. People on the street began to murmur. Some of them recognized the boutique. "I've shopped there before," one woman said, her voice full of shock. "Oh my goodness! I tried on clothes there last week." Another woman covered her mouth, tears in her eyes. So they were watching us. The crowd grew larger. Phones came out. Videos were recorded. Within minutes, the story started spreading online. By the time Zuri and Mandla returned to the station to give their full statements, the news had already reached social media. Posts appeared with headlines like, "Hidden cameras found in popular boutique," and "City police investigate privacy scandal." At the station, officers thanked them again. "You both did a brave thing," one said. "You probably saved many people from harm." Zuri nodded quietly. She was exhausted but grateful. "I just did what anyone should do," she said softly. Mandla smiled. "Not everyone would have noticed," he said. "And even fewer would have had the courage to act." Later that night, the story was on television. Reporters stood outside the boutique as police continued their investigation. The once beautiful store now looked broken and empty. The lights were off, the sign was half removed, and a yellow tape stretched across the entrance. At home, Zuri sat on her couch, watching the news. The reporter said that several people had come forward to confirm they had been customers there. Some cried while sharing their experiences. The police promised that those responsible would face serious charges. Zuri turned off the TV and sat in silence. A week had passed since the truth came out, and the once famous boutique, Golden Glamour, now stood silent and empty. The bright lights were gone, the glass doors locked, and the golden sign that once shined proudly above the entrance had been taken down. A yellow notice from the city police was taped to the door, warning people that the building was under investigation. The street outside was as busy as ever. People walked by, some slowing down to stare at the closed boutique. A few whispered to each other, shaking their heads. Some still couldn't believe what had happened. Others looked scared, remembering how often they had shopped there. Zuri stood across the street, watching quietly. The sun was warm on her skin, and the sound of cars and chatter filled the air, but her thoughts were far away. She still remembered every detail of that first day, the mirror, the blinking red light, and the fear that had frozen her in place. Now, looking at the locked door, it felt like a different world. She took a slow breath and felt a mix of emotions, sadness, relief, and pride. The sadness came from knowing how many people had been hurt. Relief, because it was finally over. And pride, because she had been brave enough to act. Her phone buzzed with another message. It was from Mandla. "They've confirmed it," the message read. The cameras were part of a larger network. They caught 2 more people connected to the recordings. Zuri read the message twice and smiled softly. Justice was still happening, step by step. She texted back, "Good. I'm glad it's ending for real this time." A few moments later, Mandla called her. His voice was calm but happy. "You should have seen the news this morning. They called you a hero again." Zuri laughed quietly. "A hero? I just saw something wrong and said something." "That's exactly why you're a hero," Mandla said. "Most people would have stayed quiet. You didn't." Zuri smiled. "I couldn't. I kept thinking, what if it was someone else in there? Someone younger? Someone who wouldn't notice?" There was a pause. Mandla's voice softened. "You changed things, Zuri. People will think twice now. That's important." After the call ended, Zuri kept walking down the street. She passed other shops, shoe stores, cafes, and a few small boutiques that looked warm and inviting. The city seemed brighter that day, but she knew how easily light could hide shadows. She stopped in front of one boutique, a new one she hadn't seen before. The window display sparkled beautifully with colorful dresses and jewelry. For a moment, she thought about going in, just to look. But when she saw her reflection in the large mirror near the door, she smiled instead. "Not every sparkle is safe," she said softly, her reflection looking back at her. She meant it not just for mirrors or boutiques, but for everything in life. Some things look perfect on the surface, but inside, they hide something dangerous. A young woman walked up beside her, looking at the same display. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" the woman said cheerfully. "Yes," Zuri replied kindly. "It is. But always check before you trust." The woman gave her a curious look, then smiled politely and walked inside. Zuri watched her go, hoping she would remember those words. As she continued walking, she passed a group of people talking near a bus stop. They were watching a video on a phone. One of them said, "That's the girl from the boutique story. The one who found the cameras." Zuri's name had been shared widely online, though she never asked for fame. She had been interviewed once, and she remembered how nervous she felt sitting in front of the camera. The reporter had asked her, "What made you speak up?" Zuri had answered simply, "Because silence lets bad things grow." Now, people recognized her sometimes, at the market, at the bus stop, or on the street. They thanked her, smiled at her, and some even called her brave. But Zuri didn't feel like a hero. She was just someone who couldn't ignore what she saw. That night, she sat by her window with a cup of tea. The city lights twinkled in the distance, and the sounds of music drifted from a nearby cafe. She thought about how strange life could be. One small discovery, one tiny blinking light, had changed everything. Her parents had called her earlier that day from their village. Her mother's voice was full of pride. "You made us proud, my child," she had said. "You showed the world that truth is stronger than fear." Her father, who usually didn't say much, had simply added, "You've reminded people that courage isn't loud. It's quiet and steady." Zuri had smiled at their words. She didn't know if she would ever do something like that again, but she knew she would never ignore her instincts. Sometimes, one small act could protect many. Later that evening, Mandla came to visit. He brought food from their favorite cafe, and they sat together at her table. "Do you think people will forget?" Zuri asked. Mandla shook his head. "No. They might move on, but they'll remember. Especially the ones who learned from it. The story will make others more careful. That's what matters." Zuri nodded. "I hope so. I don't want anyone to go through that kind of fear again." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the city's sounds outside. Then Mandla looked at her with a small grin. "You know, you could do more with this. Maybe talk to schools or make a safety campaign. You could teach people how to spot hidden cameras." Zuri blinked in surprise. "Me? Talk to schools? Why not?" he said. "People listen to those who've lived the story. You've already started something. You could make it bigger." The thought stayed with her long after he left. That night, as she lay in bed, she thought about how many people had sent her messages online. Young girls, mothers, and even men, all thanking her for opening their eyes. Maybe Mandla was right. Maybe this was just the beginning. The next morning, Zuri opened her laptop and started writing ideas. Simple ones, like how to stay alert in public places, how to spot hidden cameras, how to report suspicious behavior. She didn't know where it would lead, but it felt like the right thing to do. Weeks passed, and her small idea turned into a real campaign. A local radio station invited her to speak. A few schools asked her to visit. Everywhere she went, she told her story, not to scare people, but to remind them that awareness could protect them. People began calling her the voice of caution. One afternoon, after a long day of speaking at a community event, Zuri walked home through the same street where it had all started. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the buildings. She slowed down as she reached the spot where the boutique once stood. Now, there was a new shop in its place, a small bookstore. The windows were clean, and the shelves inside were filled with colorful books. There were no mirrors, no flashing lights, just calm and peace. Zuri stood there for a moment, smiling to herself. She could almost see her reflection in the glass, but this time it didn't frighten her. It reminded her of how far she had come. A little girl walked out of the bookstore holding her mother's hand. The child looked up at Zuri and said, "You're the lady from the news." Zuri laughed gently. "Yes, I am." "Thank you for saving people," the girl said shyly before running off. Zuri's smile softened. That simple thank you meant more than all the news stories and interviews. As she turned to leave, she whispered to herself one last time, "Not every sparkle is safe."